Well, good morning, Commissioner Outlaw. It is an absolute honor to have you here. She is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, but as you've learned about sororities before, we are all in this together in service. We are Conwell and we are Conwell strong. Whether we're in the building, Commissioner, or whether we're virtual, we still try to provide lots of opportunities for our young people. And it's an honor for you to be here with us today. As you know, our school is located in the heart of Kensington with everything that's going on with the opioid crisis, but yet I have shining stars of students and teachers and families that are committed to their young people doing well despite everything that's going on in our community. So all the young people, I could go on and tell you lots of different stories about the great things that they're doing, the things that the teachers are doing, but I'm not going to cut into your time. But when you get a chance, you got to come over to Conwell and see us in action. I turn it over to Mr. Washington for the formal introduction, and we're going to get started.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Green. And again, welcome, teachers, staff, and also our students, and Commissioner Outlaw as well. And also to Ms. Battle Murillo as well. I appreciate the communication and the back and forth, and it was a challenge, but you know what? I'm so glad, I'm thankful that you're here with us, and we don't want to let you go. You know, if I could reach through that screen and just hold on to you, let you know you're not going anywhere. You're here at Conwell, and one of the things we talk about that we're resilient, we're patient, and we can take on just about anything and get through anything. With that being said, everyone, I want to introduce, Commissioner Outlaw. Of course, you know that she's a high school graduate, Holy Names High School. She attended the University of San Francisco. She has a Bachelor of Arts, and then she went on to attend Pepperdine University with an MBA. And of course, her police career is very, very extensive. Working her way up through the rank of Deputy Chief Police, responsible for so many units within the Department of Oakland, California, from internal affairs to community services, to a criminal investigation, and moving on to Portland, Oregon, where she became the police chief of their police bureau out in Portland, Oregon. And now she's here in Philadelphia. And I feel personally connected because after 24 years in law enforcement myself, just teaching the recruits at the academy where I finally ended my career. And I had an opportunity to be with your former officer, Staff Inspector Sekou Kennebrew, and I were teaching at the police academy together. So it's just, I'm like a kid in the candy store. Somebody please get me a Snicker, okay? Because I feel as though I am overwhelmed. I'm joy. I couldn't sleep last night. So without further delay, I want to introduce, if you never heard of her, I'm going to introduce you, Philadelphia Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw.
All right.
Thank you. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and good morning. I look forward to when we have the opportunity to meeting in person, and please don't forget me. I have on many occasions actually now had an opportunity to take some walking tours through Kensington. And so if you all have any projects or anything that you're doing, whether it's during school hours or after school hours, where I can be involved and I can throw on some sweats and a hoodie and, just participate in whatever it is that you're doing, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to participate just on my own time and hang out with you all. Principal Green, I don't know if you know it, but your sorority sister is also on the line. Director Battle Murillo is one of the lovely ladies of the Crimson. I won't say that out loud too often, but I will give my family props, my Divine Nine props when I can.
Yes, thank you. And hello to Soror that's out there. Hi there.
Hello, Soror. Good morning.
Yes, all in service, all in fun, all in community. And I say that because we uplift each other. And young folks, I want you to know that that's what we do. We obviously are a part of service organizations outside of our professions, but that's what we do, regardless of what organization we represent. Even though it's all in fun, there might be some fun competition. We uplift each other. It's all in fun and positivity because we're all working towards the same goals, and that's service to our communities and making sure that we're reaching down and uplifting the next generation of leaders. And that's why we're all here today, to make sure that we're not just sharing what it took for us to get into these seats, but that you're doing what you can while you can, because you're never, ever too young to begin advocating for not only for what you believe in, but showing your commitment towards social justice or whatever your passions are and wherever they lie. So just a little bit about me, because I don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, but this will not be the last time we spend time together. I quickly learned, and as Mr. Washington stated, I'm from Oakland, California, which is on the West Coast. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Bay Area, if you hear a lot of folks talk about the Bay, or if you're basketball fans, the Golden State Warriors, they just recently relocated across the bridge to San Francisco, but they played in Oakland for a long time. I'm trying to think of Too Short, Oakland. It's kind of quiet, but I'm trying to think of any associations, right? Oakland, Tupac, Oakland, Digital Underground, Oakland, Hammer, Oakland. Anyway, that's where I'm from. And I spent 20 years of my time there in the Oakland Police Department in service before I left to take the chief of police job in Portland, Oregon, which is the state. Oregon is just right above the state of California. And a lot of folks think that the West Coast is all the same, but it's not. California is very different from the state of Oregon in that it's not very diverse. I knew that going in, but it's really not diverse at all. So culturally, it was a huge, huge, huge shift for me. So making the transition from Oregon to Philadelphia, coming to Philadelphia is a lot more like home for me, a lot more like Oakland than it was in Portland, because obviously I feel a lot more at home where I can look and see a lot of more folks that I can relate to. But all of that to say, my transition into law enforcement wasn't like the transition was for a lot of people here in the Philadelphia Police Department. And I say that because what I very quickly learned was that there's a lot of legacy here. Here in the Philadelphia Police Department, you'll find a lot of mothers, parents, uncles, aunts, cousins, previous military. People grew up with law enforcement in their families, and they aspired to become police officers because their loved ones were cops, pretty much. I didn't have that upbringing. My grandfather and my dad and my uncle had been in the military, but they went in and they were out. I was raised to respect authority, but we didn't have a lot of positive interactions with police. And I say that in the sense of, again, it wasn't, hi, there's Officer Friendly, everybody wave. My peer group and I were kind of, and again, I wasn't mixed up in bad things. I went to school, I did what I was supposed to do most of the time. And then I went home and I played in the street and did what, we played, that's what we did. But when we saw cops, my friends and I, we were like, run, we didn't have no business running. We weren't doing anything, but we didn't have positive interactions with police officers. We didn't know our police officers by names. We had experiences personally where police officers, and me personally, came into our homes and took our loved ones away from us. So we didn't, again, wake up aspiring to become police officers or say, I look up to police officers, because we didn't have those positive interactions. And so it wasn't until I got to high school where I had the opportunity to actually be around a police officer in a more interactive way, in a non-enforcement way, where I got to see the human side of police and saw that they were just like us and saw that they had similar interests. And he was also from Oakland, and that he knew a lot of the same people and liked a lot of the same restaurants. And actually driving around with him, he shared a lot of Oakland's history and why a lot of the streets were named what they were and why a lot of the buildings were named what they were. And, I got to see him far beyond just what the badge and the uniform represented. And then once that 2-week program was over, this was like a career exploration program that I participated in. Once that program was over, I had the opportunity to be a part of an Explorer program. And then once I graduated from high school and became the first one in my generation to go on to college, they said, you know, we have something called a police cadet program. Are you interested? And we pay you. I said, okay. And then I applied to become a police cadet. So little did I know, I was participating in what was kind of like a pipeline to recruitment to becoming a police officer, but they kind of cut their claws in me from the time I was 14 years old, on to when I became a police officer and after I graduated from school. But I say all that to say my journey into law enforcement wasn't a traditional one. And had it not been for that positive interaction and opportunities for fellowship and seeing law enforcement officers in a different light outside of the uniform, I would not be sitting before you today as a police commissioner, because it never crossed my mind in a million years to go into law enforcement. I wanted to go to school and go straight through to be to get my PhD, actually, since I was one of the first to go, to be a social psychologist. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to study groups of people and the psychology behind what drove groups or aggregates of groups to do what they did. So anyway, that's how I landed here. I will tell you that once I got to high school, my mom, I was raised by a single mom. She kind of did some reverse psychology on me, and I had the opportunity to go to an all-girls Catholic high school. I'd grown up in public school my entire time, my whole life. And she did some mind judo on me or something. And I didn't know anybody at this school. And I had to have a second interview to get into the school. I didn't know that I had to have a second interview. I thought everybody had 2 interviews. But my second interview consisted of one question, and it was Sister Catherine, and she asked me if I would do anything to get kicked out. And I had the nerve to be offended by this question, but I didn't realize why she was asking me this. And she literally unfolded this trifold, and it showed me that my test scores literally were off the charts. But she asked me this question because I received nothing but negative recommendations from my counselors, and my grades were terrible. So everything, aside from my test scores, reflected poorly upon me. And quite frankly, everything outwardly that I had shown to her, and remember what I said about, just me, what I had learned about the police and, and again, my childhood friends, I love them to death to this day, but it wasn't cool to be smart. And I remember again in every report card, I was that one that talks too much in the comments. I was always talking back, almost always, to the teachers, always had something to say. Probably didn't show much respect for authority at the time, but I was very smart, was in STEM programs after school, but I didn't apply myself because it wasn't a cool thing to do. And again, this was now reflecting, or at least this was what my elders outside of my family and my immediate community and my neighborhoods, this is what they were thinking of me. This was their impression. And I knew I wasn't raised this way. And once she asked me that, because I don't know if you remember me saying, I was offended by the fact that she asked me that, knowing full well that I wasn't brought up this way. And so the light bulb clicked on for me at that moment, in that moment, because again, I was offended that she asked me that. But now I'm realizing how I was carrying myself as a now young woman, what the world was thinking of me, and that I needed to do better. And so I answered her question and said, no, absolutely not. I wouldn't do anything to get kicked out of this school. And long story short, I made the decision, even though my mom apparently was going to send me to this school anyway, even though I knew, it would take financial aid in order for me to go there. I made the decision to go. My peer group changed. It was a very competitive school. I remember literally crying one semester because I got a B+ and it messed up my GPA. But that's how competitive it was, right? I graduated with all the honors, that I could get and that I can think of. community service, my peer group changed, my mindset changed. I'm now committed to the things that I'm passionate about. Social justice is now on my radar. But again, I grew and I developed as a young moment over that 4 years in my high school time. And it was then where I was developing myself as a young leader and finding my space in the world. And so again, I'm sharing this because it was never too early. And this was around the time where Rodney King, the riots were happening all across the country. But again, being in Oakland, being very close to Southern California, just as far as, it's like a 6 to 8 hour drive, but it was close in that we could all hop in the car if we wanted to. I remember our teachers chaining the doors, thinking that we were going to go out and protest. It was a time of activism, and Oakland, California being the home of the Black Panthers, there was a lot of concern about what we would do. But again, I remember just using the experiences there and what I had learned to shape what I wanted to do career-wise, to shape what I wanted to put my energy behind. And then once I actually got into college, like life happens for many of us, I found that my last semester in college, I found that I was going to be expecting a child and I was going to be a single mom. And although I still graduated from college, it threw a curveball. It threw a curveball for me because I wasn't going to go straight through and get my PhD like I thought I could have. But now, things got real and I needed to provide for my son and I needed some benefits and I wanted to be able to make money to provide for us without aid. And so I knew the police department was there. And I took the physical agility test. My son was 2 weeks old. I tested and I became a police officer. So technically, I would still say that I still became a social psychologist in many ways. I went back to graduate school when I was a full-time employee with a family and everything else. I went to work during the day and worked full-time, again, and went to class full-time after that. Was in grad school for 2 years, went back and forth between campus and work. I still did it. But my life experiences is what shaped who I am today. It's my life experiences have shaped my leadership style. It's shaped my perspective. It's informed my policy decisions and just really how I approach what I do, just and quite frankly, how I carry how I carry myself and how I move forward in this role. So with that, I went a little bit over, but I want to make sure I answer some questions that I did see here. I think I answered most. I answered about where I went to college, some of the differences. Okay, I don't feel too bad because I think I answered some of the questions that came from some of the classes. And I will tell you this, one of the questions that I got was, how did George Floyd's murder affect how I lead? And I'll tell you this, I lead, it's not just from my own personal experiences, right? When I got here, and quite frankly, when I got to Portland, one of the first questions, so usually they do a big press conference, they announce you, and one of the first questions they asked in Portland was, well, what's it like, or I'm paraphrasing, how's being a Black woman, what's it like to be a Black woman? I could be messing it up, but I think you all know where I'm going with this. What's it like being the first Black woman as a police chief, and then change it here to a police commissioner? And I was kind of like, and I had to, before I answered it, I corrected them and I said, well, I would like to think that I didn't get this job because I'm a Black woman. I got it because of my qualifications. And then they kind of backpedaled a little bit and but I got the same question here, just in a different way. Well, what's it like being right? And I have to explain to people, and it's getting old, but I was born this way and I just happened to choose my profession, right? This uniform goes on and off, but I didn't get to choose being a Black female or a Black woman. So the perspective that I bring as a Black woman, that doesn't go away. Me being the mother of two sons who are now 22 and 20, that never goes away. Me being a mother, my nerves being bad when they go out, me not being able to sleep until they get back in if they happen to be visiting, that never goes away, right? So those of you that think your parents are too, what's the word? You think we're too cautious or we worry about everything, that's never going to go away. You're always going to be our babies, right? And be happy that we care as much as we do. I say that because I'm a mother first. And when we think about, or when I think about what happened with Mr. Floyd, my mother hat is worn first. The first thing I think about is how he cried for his mother. That is what gut punches me first as a mother. That's where my reaction comes in first, right? So when I talk about my perspectives or my life experiences or how I use my perspective to inform policy here moving forward, I utilize those lived experiences and I put myself in those shoes first, right? And then I'm a cop second. And that's what I would hope that we all do in these roles here. When we respond to a 911 call for service or whatever it is, my expectation is that we would treat anybody, whether we know them or not, as if it's a loved one, a brother, a sister, a cousin, or whomever, a neighbor, or somebody that we know, because we all know that we treat those folks differently, right? Unless we're just super compassionate people. But we come across hundreds of people that we don't know every day, but we have to treat them with the same dignity and respect and empathy of those folks that we're closest to. That's how the compassion comes out. That's how the empathy comes out. So that's how I lead. And so in answering how did that murder affect how I lead, that's how I go into the decisions that I make, right? What if this were my loved one? And that's how I expect everyone else to make going into the decisions that they're making. Have I ever experienced sexism in my line of work? Absolutely. This is a male-dominated field. But the key to overcoming sexism is knowing what it looks like and then calling it out head on when you see it. I will tell you this. Now that there's more and more training available, we as women are far more empowered to call it out. I would say years ago, I didn't always know what it was. I would, sexism, racism, pick a bias, you name it. Everything didn't always have a phrase for it. I remember, and I'll just use this example because it's the easiest one that I can think of. It's veering away from sexism, but it's still a microaggression. Back in the day, I didn't even know it was a term called a microaggression. We're like, what's a microaggression? People used to come up to me and say, oh, what are you mixed with? And I knew it made me feel uncomfortable. I didn't like it, but there was always this assumption that I was never enough, right? Are you Black? Well, yes, I am. Or are you African American? Yes, I am. Well, what are you mixed with? And there was this implication that I wasn't Black enough. Well, my mom's Black and my dad's Black. And then they would go on to say, well, no, you must be mixed with something later on down. And I'm like, why am I even having this conversation with you? I told you what I was. But again, the whole point of that is to get them, for them to say, well, you're not something enough, right? Either you're too much or you're too little. So I started telling them, when they asked me, well, what are you mixed with? I tell them German Shepherd. And it would shut up down right away. And they'd be like, oh, huh? Do you understand what I'm getting at? I know very full well what you're getting at. But I'm letting you know, I don't want you asking me this anymore because it's not appropriate. But this was before, right, the implicit bias training and all these trainings started rolling out. And I knew that what they were doing was called, it's something called a microaggression. right? This is a form of bias. This is a form of implicit bias, and there's ways of calling these things out. I was calling it out then, I just didn't know, I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. So it's the same thing. Sexism is the way it manifests its way now is it shows up in forms of scrutiny. When I first got here, and I'm gonna have to cut it short, y'all, I'm sorry. We'll just have to continue it. There's so many things we can talk about. What sexism looks like today is instead of, here's an example. My colleagues, when they got here, 2020 was a crazy year. We all know this. And we went through a pandemic, once in a lifetime for many of us. Now, if there's any other police chiefs living today that went through a pandemic, let me know, because I want to talk to them. But there are none. I'll tell you that right now today. The level of scrutiny that I got in the form of, tell me why you think you're most suitable for. Well, tell me why. Every question that I got asked from media was putting me on the defense from day one, asking me why I deserve to be, basically asking me to justify my existence in this role. When you go back and look at the line of questioning of my predecessors, it wasn't that way. It gave them the benefit of the doubt. And actually, look at not even my predecessors, look at my colleagues across the country. They get the benefit of the doubt. My male counterparts, they get the benefit of the doubt. Their line of questioning would start with, oh, it's been a tough year, huh? How do you think we're going to get out of this? As opposed to, tell me why you think you're, right? So the sexism, all the isms will be more nuanced in the form of scrutiny. But the key to overcoming is identifying it, knowing it when it's happening, and calling folks out. And that's what I'll continue to do. And that's what I think you as young people, again, whether it's cyberbullying, whether it's sexism, whether it's bias, whatever it is, whether it's even dealing with law enforcement and not being heard. That's one of the key things that I think is very important that we have to do better with moving forward this year, is making sure that your voices as young people are heard. So you have the opportunity to have a seat at the table, and you tell us what you want to see, what type of service you should be provided. Use your voice, and that's what we're going to provide for you. And we'll be happy to, as we're ready to roll it out. We'll be rolling out a Youth Advisory Commission. I'm not ready to talk about it just yet, but it will be a commission that will be meeting with me and my executive staff on a quarterly basis, so we can hear from you. But again, all of these isms and all of the hardships and adversities are far more nuanced. And the key, again, is knowing what it looks like and calling it out moving forward. So with that, I have to close. I'm sorry it was so quick, but I really appreciated the opportunity to meet with you all today, and looking forward to when we can meet in person on the next go round.
Thank you, Commissioner Outlaw. I'm over here beaming. Everybody come off of your mute and let's give it up for Commissioner Outlaw.
Hey.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for spending some time with us. Thank you, Mr. Washington, for organizing. Have a great day, Commissioner Outlaw. We're sending good vibes your way.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, that is awesome. You got a lot of things to take forward with you, and you can tell people that you had an opportunity to speak and talk and spend some time with our own Philadelphia Police Commissioner, Danielle Outlaw. So that is awesome. I know there were some parents that joined us as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. That was great. It is now 10:04. It's 10:04. So you know what classes that you have next. All right, so let's get going with that.